So this tutorial uses my add-on Animation Snapper Pro, and it's a paid for add-on, but before you click off, I genuinely believe this add-on makes these tasks so much easier, and that's exactly why I made this add-on. So please stick around and have a look, and sorry for the show, but I genuinely believe this add-on is something that you will find useful, and I made it so that I personally can use it in our project. So I hope you can find it as useful as I'm finding it literally every day. So if you're cleaning up Mocap or you doing game animations and you have a game cycle, like in this case, let me just switch that off. So you've got this game cycle, walk cycle, and you want it to be a very specific speed, or you've got a Mocap animation you brought in and it's got sliding feet. So I've put some speed on this one. So this is not the original speed of the animation. So I've got some foot slide going on. Sometimes you don't even know what the original speed was, or you want it at a very, very specific speed. So in this case, I want this character to move at exactly 1 meter per second forward. So I put that speed in here directly on the armature, and I put it on an animation layer. So for this tutorial, I'm using 2 add-ons. Later I'll show you another one where you don't need the animation layers add-on, but in this case the animation layers add-on just makes it a lot easier. So I'll show that first. It's a very good add-on. It kind of makes Blender a bit like Maya with Maya's animation layers. So if you're serious about game animation and other animation, I think this is a good one to get, but I'll show you alternative a bit later. But the other one I'm using is Animation Snapper Pro, which is my own add-on. And this is add-on also to help you to do this kind of in a very exact way. So this is my technique for fixing this foot slide problem that you very often have. So to explain what we're trying to achieve, I thought it's just good to put this kind of like diagram here so I can just show you kind of like visually the 4 different steps we go through to do this foot plant. So with this foot plant, we're trying to preserve some of the rotation and small movements of the original mocap, especially the rotation relative to the main pivot point where the foot kind of like pivots. So sometimes if the toes move a lot, your pivot point will be around here somewhere where your ball kind of like twists on the ground. Other times, if the feet are pretty stiff, you want it to be here, normally kind of like on the toe where your main kind of like pivot is. It just depends at which point you want to snap it and what you want to use as your relative kind of like rotation point, because you don't want to get rid of those rotations, but you want the rotations to be relative to the point that you want to stop it sliding. So that point that it's planted on the ground, you want to pick that as your relative kind of like parent point. So with Animation Snapper Pro, it makes it really easy because you can choose any vertex on your foot mesh, and you can use that as a reference point. And automatically Animation Snapper Pro will create a helper for you that bakes to that particular point, but it will also create this tiled offset helper that's just parented to this. And because it's parented to this, and you can animate this independently, you can use the one to get your location data, and you can use the child to preserve your subtle rotation and movements of the foot relative to that point. So we can use this to our advantage now to lock this foot into a particular place while it's making contact with the ground. So the first step would be is to select a vertex then on our foot, which is going to be our main sort of visual pivot point. And then we're going to bake only location to that helper. So when we create it and we put only location baking on, it's going to bake only location data to that. We only need the location data. It's actually at this point better to just have the location data because we want to split it off and preserve the rotation data on this one. So when we get rid of the location, or selectively get rid of the location data on this to keep it in the same place, it's not getting rid of all our original foot motion which was preserved on this one. So the first step would be we bake then to the vertex on the foot that we want to use as the main pivot. We bake location only. While this still has and following the foot perfectly, we then want to bake this controller to the foot controller. So this is then going to have all the original data of the foot controller on it. Then we're going to remove any slide or location data from this one that we don't want at the point that we want to plant it. And because this is a child of this is just going to follow this. So if this is standing still, it's going to still have all that rotation and location data, but this is going to keep it in the relative point that we want. And then once we remove all the relevant location data of this one, we can use this controller then as the thing that we snap to, so the foot can follow this over the frames that we want. And because the foot's then following this, and this is anchored in the same spot, the foot will be anchored as well. So I hope that makes sense, but otherwise just watch the video and you'll see it in action, and hopefully it will make more sense then as well. So this is kind of like a game walk forward, like an aim walk forward. I want it to be exactly 1 meter per second. So how do you fix this feet from sliding and change the speed of the animation without the feet sliding like this? So the first thing to do is I'm gonna go into this, and I'm just gonna create another layer for myself, and I'm gonna call it foot slide fix. Okay, cool. And now that I've got that layer, I can switch the forward motion on and off, because that's on this separate layer, and I can see it with the motion. So at the moment I want to see it with the motion. Later on I want to take the motion off so I can make sure that my animation still perfectly loops. But I'm gonna put it on for now, and let's look at fixing these feet. So if I look at these 2 feet, you see the left foot is already planted in the beginning, and then the right foot plants, and it stays almost planted almost to the end, more or less. Okay, so let's do this. Let's fix the left foot first. So if I go into here, I put it in edit mode, I'm going to pick like a vertex roundabout where the foot rotates. So let's pick something over there by the toe, because there's not a lot of toe bend in this one. So it seems to be, you know, it's around that vertex that things rotate a bit more. It goes into the floor a little bit, but that's not a big issue in this case. You can fix it in other ways, but that's not important for now. Okay, so open Animation Snapper Pro. Then you want to bake a helper for element. So this is going to track this vertex, and I want to track location only. I don't want the rotation part on this track. So I'm just going to put on location only. I'm going to put on playback range and bake helper for element. So there you can see that little arrow there. That's following my foot. So when you bake this bake helper for elements, it creates 2 different helpers, or empties like they're called in Blender. It creates your master one, and it creates this offset one. Now this offset one you can put anywhere you want, and you can also animate this if you want to, so it just gives you that extra flexibility. So now while the foot is still doing its original stuff, I want this to be exactly following this foot relative to this position as well. So I'm going to select my foot. So if you click on this here, even if you're not in pose mode, you can actually select bones by just clicking on them, and just make sure that's selected. And now I'm going to select this offset helper, and I'm going to have that as the one that's being snapped. And now I'm going to put it on location and rotation because I want the exact motion. And now I'm just going to batch it forward. Now that helper is going to follow this foot exactly. So you see it's following that foot exactly there. Okay. Now I'm going to look at my foot again. So I want this foot to be planted in the beginning. I don't want this to be sliding backwards like this. And I want it to keep, not move backwards like this in Y up until it lifts. So it lifts around there 18. Okay. So let's have a look at this. So this one I'm just going to use for this beginning motion. So I don't want any of this Y motion in this. So I'm going to go and isolate the Y, hide the rest. And I'm just going to get rid of all the Y motion. So I'm not going to need this again. So I just need that beginning reference. So if I delete that, means now that this is staying in the same spot, but only in the Y. It still has the other motion. Okay. And this is parented to this. So relatively it's following that then. So it's also not going to move forward in the Y. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my foot controller, go into pose mode, and I am going to go to my animation layers. So make sure I'm on my foot fix layer, and I'm just going to anchor down where I want the feet to have its anchors, because I still want my loop. So first of all, I still want my loop, and I still want this foot in the beginning and end to be in this location. So I'm just going to go and let's make this smaller. I'm just going to set a key there. I'm going to set a key at the end as well, because I want to anchor that in the beginning and the end, so that doesn't change. Then I'm going to go through and look where it's lifting off the ground, and like we saw before, it's 18. So I'm just gonna anchor that in as well, so I just know where to stop. Okay, so in Animation Snapper Pro, I still got the selection, but now I want to swap these around. Now I want the foot to follow this helper. So I'm just going to swap these two around. I'm going to go back to the beginning. So now this foot is going to be snapped to this helper, and this helper is following this parent of this helper here, and this has got no more of the Y motion on it, but this preserved all the other rotation and other movements of this foot, so it's not going to kill the foot and just make it dead in that position. So now I'm just going to basically step it forward, and see my foot now stays in the Y in the same position. And because this is on animation layer, this should just interpolate over this, so the foot ends up where it used to be over this time because it's on an animation layer. And now if I go back to my animation layers and I switch off the forward movement, so let's go back, switch off the forward movement, Oh, before we switch that off, let me just play it. So you can see now that foot is not sliding anymore. If I switch this fix layer off, see it's slid like that before. And if I switch it back on where we fixed it, see that slide, all that slide is gone. And now for the final test to make sure we did everything right, let's switch off the forward motion. And now we got to make sure that we're still looping perfectly. Yep, we're still looping perfectly because we anchored those in the beginning and the end. So that is the left foot done. The right foot, and this is one of the main reasons why in Animation Snapper Pro we got backwards steps. And this is very difficult to do if you're using constraints, to do this backwards kind of solve, because when you're switching the constraints, doesn't like to do it before a certain frame. So it just gets very complicated to manage. But this is all going to keyframe, so it makes it a lot easier. So let's look at then what our left foot is doing and how we're going to fix this. So our left foot makes contact, say 17, and then it ends up there. Let's see this a bit more clearly. Let's put this forward motion back in. Yeah. Okay. So I want to solve this. I want this foot to end up in this position, in that spot. I want the toe to end up in that spot at the end. But when he puts his foot down, it's there. So I want the end position. I want to be able to solve this backward. Let's go back to this. Do exactly the same steps. We pick a vertex and the position that we think is going to be. We go back to Animation Snapper Pro, put it in location only. We've got it on our time range, and then we create that baked helper. There it is following it. Okay, so this is my baked helper. It's following the position. And while, this is important, while it's still got all its motion, now we want to get the foot, get this offset one, which is this one, this offset one. We want this to track the foot first. So we select, let's clear this, select the foot, and then we select this one and make sure it's the offset one. And now we're just gonna batch that forward. So we bake, oh, I should have put it on location and rotation. So do that again. Okay, and now I want that end Y position, and I don't want it to move before. So this time we're going to go in here. We're going to hide all the rest. Now I'm just going to get rid of all the Y before that, only on the Y. And now that's going to stay in that same location where we want the foot to be. And now I'm going to bake the foot back to this, but first let's go into pose mode. We're going to send our anchor points in our animation layer. So go back to animation layers, make sure we're on that. So I want to set a keyframe there to anchor it. Very important. Set the keyframe beginning to anchor it because we don't want that loop to change. When does it really go in there? It's about 17, so 17 is a reference. Back to Animation Snapper Pro, we already got this foot and that helper. We're just going to swap this around so it snaps the other way around, and I'm going to go to the back and I'm going to just step it backwards. You can also just put this time range in here, but for these short things it's easier just to kind of like just quickly snap it backward, and see how that toe is now staying in that position. Wonderful. And let's just see if we haven't got introduced any errors. Now we make this stride shorter. This foot lifts a little bit too much. So I'm just going to go here and on the animation layer, I'm just going to tone that down a little bit. And it's going to do it, interpolate it over that whole thing because I'm still on the animation layer. So that looks a bit better. Okay. Now for the final test. Let us see. Yep. If we play this, those feet, the feet doesn't slide anymore. We're going exactly the speed we want to go. And if we put off the forward motion, put that off, we just got to make sure we're still doing a perfect loop. So now when you export this on the spot, you take it into Unreal Engine or Unity, you put a speed of exactly 1 meter per second in, this walk animation won't slide in the game. I should probably also mention that for the sake of making this a bit easier, using the animation layers and being able to quickly show you this forward motion going on and off, I put this forward motion actually on the armature itself and not in pose mode on this, but on the armature itself, on the master armature. So I can quickly turn this on and off so you can see the forward motion. And because all the controllers in here will follow this route, if you do this kind of like temporary forward motion as a reference, it's a bit easier just to put it on that because it doesn't get too confused about what exactly is moving in the scene. So yeah, hope that makes sense. Hey, so here's how we do the same thing but without animation layers. So this is basically just a base animation. Let me just graph editor back. There we go. Okay, so we're going to put this forward motion then. Let me clear all this out. We're going to put this forward motion just on the armature itself, not in pose mode, just on the entire armature, just because it's kind of like a temporary motion. We just want to see that our feet's not sliding. When we export it to the game, we'll export it on the spot, and then in the game you'll just go and put the speed back in that you want, or have the forward motion the speed you want, but you export it on the spot anyway. So let's just put a temporary keyframe in there. So we want it to move in this direction 1 meter over 30 frames, which is 1 second. Let me look at the item. So that's -1 in this case. Okay. So this we want to make interpolation linear. We want a constant speed. Then I'm just going to put a modifier on it to say cycles and repeat with offset, repeat with offset. So it just means throughout this, it's going to be moving exactly 1 meter forward per second. Okay. So we got that in now. Now we want this get the feet to stop sliding, but just on the keyframes themselves. Let me just put this off. So like before, we're going to pick a vertex, Snapper Pro. We're going to track only location, only for the time range, and bake it forward. Okay, so it's tracking that. Then we want to bake this helper to this foot. So select the foot, select the helper. Then we want to put location and rotation, snap it again, or actually batch it forward, the entire animation. Remove the Y from this. Delete that. Okay, and then we want to snap the foot to this locator. I'm going to swap these around. We're going to do it up until frame 18, and we're just going to step it forward until 18. But because we didn't do this on animation layer, if you actually now look at this, so it locked in place just like before, but now when we get to 18, see there's going to be a snap. There's going to be that snap. Because it adjusted all this, but obviously on, oh, did I snap until 19? Anyway, we're going to have that snap there. So just delete a couple of keyframes on the foot. So delete a couple of keyframes, delete, just to aid that. So we kind of like just doing it a little bit manually. Let's delete another one. So basically you have the same thing, but you don't have animation layers. That's helping you to transition there. And then we're going to do the same thing for this. We're going to pick one. We're going to location only, bake a helper to it. Then select the foot controller. Then this helper. Position and rotation, and location and rotation, and then batch forward. Okay, now we preserve that. We can now get rid of the Y motion in this. So for this one, we want rid of everything before. Delete. It's going to stay in that spot. And now we want to step it backwards, and we want to swap these two. So it bakes the foot back to this controller then that's linked to this one that's staying in the same spot. And we step backwards. I think it's up until about frame 17. Now we're going to have that bit of a jump there. So let's go to this. Let's delete a couple of frames. See, this foot is way forward now. Yeah, this foot is way forward now. See, it needs to be closer to the middle of this when it comes down. It's probably not as much, so yeah, maybe even a little bit further back. And then we want to probably get rid of a few frames here because it's going to jump now between those two. Just get rid of a few frames. There we go. Massaged it in. Okay, so basically it's the same basic technique in Animation Snapper Pro. It's just layers make it a little bit easier to interpolate between the different things. Here I have to just manually edit the keys a little bit more, but basically it works the same way. Cool. If this add-on is something that you think you can use, have a look at our website or just on the channel in the description or in the comments. Look for the links where you can find it. Our website is www.mellowwillow.com, and there's information on it there as well. It's available on Gumroad and Superhive. The money we make from this add-on is also to support our personal indie project. So please support us or just see how it works and then make up your mind. Cool. Thank you very much.